Macron and Starmer persuaded Trump to change his stance on Putin. Trump prepares first arms sale to Ukraine. Congress was given green light. And how Ukrainian drones become more effective over 83,000 Russian targets hit in April. The latest news next. US President Donald Trump has shifted his rhetoric regarding Russian dictator Vladimir Putin following several months of behind-the-scenes diplomatic efforts by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron, reported by Politico, citing sources within European governments on condition of anonymity. About details, according to Politico, Trump's change of course was the result of lengthy coordination efforts between London, Paris and Washington. Starmer and Macron sought to persuade the US president to ease pressure on Volodymyr Zelensky and redirect some of his anger towards Putin, arguing that Putin was making Trump look like a fool.
The US president's public dig at Putin permitted diplomats in London and Paris the smallest of fist pumps, as their endeavors over the past 3 months appeared to bear fruit.
Politico reported that UK National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell and Defense Secretary John Healey had played key roles in the talks with the US administration. Their efforts were coordinated with Mark Burnett, US Special Envoy to the United Kingdom. For his part, UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy noted that he had held 13 conversations with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio in 2025 alone, while Starmer and Trump had spoken almost as many times.
Zelensky had clearly managed to affect Trump's thinking in Rome, said one former UK ambassador, speaking on condition of anonymity. According to him, the UK and France repeatedly stressed that Putin was disrespecting Trump by consistently breaking the ceasefire he claimed to be implementing.
He suggested that this had become a particularly sensitive issue because Trump is squeamish about people being killed. It bothers him. For the moment, Trump has understood Putin can't be trusted. It's something that the President Macron repeatedly says and tries to get through to Trump. That's our strategy right now, confirmed an unnamed French official. However, the UK and France are now left anxiously waiting to see whether Trump's tougher stance on Putin will withstand his impatience to move on quickly. Stephen Pfeiffer, a senior fellow at the US-based think tank, the Brookings Institution, also noted that Trump had a blind spot for Putin ignoring US requests, but his recent statements on social media seemed to suggest he thought he was being played by Putin, Pfeiffer stressed. US President Donald Trump has commented on the minerals deal for the first time since Ukraine and the US signed it. He believes the US will get more than it puts in, News Nation reports. Asked whether the deal could somehow deter Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, Trump said, "Well, it could. We made a deal today that will get, much more in theory than $350 billion, but I want it to be protected," Trump said. That the amount his predecessor, Joe Biden, gave Ukraine in cash and military equipment, he said. Trump reiterated that the United States has given Ukraine far more aid than Europe. Trump said he told Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky during their meeting at the Vatican before the funeral of Pope Francis that it would be a very good thing if he signed the deal because Russia is much bigger and much stronger. About Ukraine-US minerals deal, Ukraine and the United States have signed an economic cooperation agreement, better known as the minerals deal. Under this agreement, the United States will gain access to Ukrainians' resources, but control will remain with Ukraine. Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund will also be established jointly with the United States. Its management will be divided 50-50 and neither party will have a majority vote. Earlier on April 17th, Ukraine and the United States signed a memorandum that recorded the countries' common intentions to conclude a large-scale economic partnership agreement. The partnership agreement must be ratified by the Ukrainian parliament. The U.S. Department of State transmitted to Congress a notice of arms export license to Ukraine. The amount of contract is $50 million or more, according to the U.S. Congress. The upper house of the U.S. Congress has received a notice from a senior official in the State Department's Office of Legislative Affairs to certify a proposed license to export defense articles to Ukraine for $50 million or more. The notification was sent to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee under the Arms Export Control Act. It covers the export of defense articles, including technical data and defense services to Ukraine. Earlier, Ukrainian media reported that the Donald Trump administration had informed Congress that it had given the green light to arms sales to Ukraine. This refers to the export of military goods through the mechanism of direct commercial sales of $50 million or more. About U.S. assistance to Ukraine, this will be the first arms sale approved by the Trump administration for Ukraine. Since Trump returned to the White House, the administration has not provided new military aid to Ukraine. Earlier, the New York Times wrote that Trump's team was not discussing further military aid to Ukraine. At the same time, the packages that were previously approved by the Joe Biden administration are coming to an end. President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukraine is ready to buy $30 to $50 billion worth of weapons and air defense systems from the United States. In particular, it is about Patriot systems or obtaining a license for their production. He later instructed the government to get the US to agree to the Patriot deal. The effectiveness of the Ukrainian armed forces drones has increased. In April, drones struck 8% more targets than in March. Oleksandr Syrsky, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, reports. In April, according to Ukrainian's army chief, over 83,000 Russian targets were hit and destroyed, an 8% increase compared to March. In particular, strike accuracy improved by another 5%. About meeting on unmanned systems, Syrsky said he also held a monthly meeting on unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, involving a wide range of commanders from drone aviation units. During their presentations, commanders shared unique experiences in using drones and achieving top results. The Commander-in-Chief also listened to reports on scaling up the unmanned forces units to brigade and regiment levels, their staffing, and the expansion of capabilities.
There was also discussion on increasing the volume of professional training for UAV operators in training centers, as well as developing cooperation between the Army and the civilian sector, including training drone operators in civilian schools. The armed forces have developed a roadmap for establishing a collective training system for UAV units.
Ukrainian's army chief emphasized that a top priority for Ukrainian troops is to eliminate enemy UAV operators and their command posts.
In the unmanned systems forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, methods for such combat have been successfully tested in the operational zone of one of the operational tactical groupings.
That's all for today. Thanks for watching this video. Like and subscribe.